Hello, hello, hello. The mask is back, okay? And what we have here is the country tier list in the UFC. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, an S tier would be someone who has done some really good work in their division while being champion, or if their country is a very small population or very not well funded in combat sports, but they still manage to get into UFC and do some decent work. Some of that might get into A tier and not S tier, but D tier, for example, is like, oh, you got into the UFC, okay, but you didn't really do anything. So, yeah, that's kind of a good way to map out my basis for this ranking. So, let's get into it. We have China. I'm going to put in C tier, okay? Because they do have Zhang Weili, but she's a women's champion, okay? And otherwise, they just have Song Yadong, who is really good. He's top six or seven if you include the champion in the UFC bantamweight division, which is top three divisions in the UFC. So that is really good. But the problem is their population is like 1 billion. So they could be doing a lot better with the population size they have. They could be doing way, way better. And Zhang Weili is, arguably the GOAT in that weight class. But, you still have girls like Ioana Jędrzejczyk and Rose Namajunas. Rose isn't in that weight class anymore, but she was. And, you know, she also did some decent work and arguably beat her twice. You could say that Zhang Weili beat her, but let's not get into that. Ultimately, she could be the GOAT, she could not be, but she's definitely top two. And again, that's great, but they should have a history of champions with the amount of population and funding they should have for combat sports, especially in the UFC. I know UFC's only been around for 30 years, but come on. So, USA, I mean, come on. It's got to be an S. I know that they've been falling off lately, but it feels like half the roster, or more than half the roster, is still USA guys. You got guys that are the greatest of all time, like John Jones. Okay, yes, he's used PEDs. He's used the pictogram. He's hid under the UFC octagon to hide from the drug testers. We get that, but ultimately you got to still look at the other guys, even if you discount those drugs things, which I don't, but even if you do, he's the goat of the sport if you consider the drugs to not be enough to deter his greatness. And then you got guys like Demetrius Johnson, who's also great in the sport. You got guys like I mean, you still got top contenders like Michael Chandler, Sean O'Malley, Dustin Poirier. Dustin Poirier is not. Michael Chandler is not necessarily a top contender anymore, but Michael Chandler's still there. He was a Bellator champion that came in and then one round KO'd Dan Hooker. So you also got guys like Henry Cejudo. He was a former double champion. You got Dominic Cruz, he was a. I know that these guys are falling off. A lot of these guys that were once champions and they were from the USA. I understand that, but even Bilal Muhammad, he's an American technically, so he's put in some work. He's got to be. And as far as I'm aware, on at least the Tapology, maybe also in the UFC page, he reps the American flag. So lots of American champions. You had Stipe. I'm going to get into him as well when I get to Croatia here soon enough. But I mean, S tier, come on. So much legacy there. Daniel Cormier. I could go on and on and on. These are just the recent ones that come to mind. And then D tier is going to get its first one in India. I mean, come on. Your best is Anshul Jubilee, and he gets KO'd twice in a row. And I'm not even sure if the UFC will keep him. They have to because they don't got anyone else except there's this one girl in the UFC that won a split decision. I think recently, maybe not too recently, but who I'm not gonna try and pronounce the first name, but I think the last name is Tojmar or something. She's okay, I guess. She's got okay kickboxing for a female fighter, but in the male weight classes, which really matter, you got Jubilee, Anshul Jubilee, who got KO'd twice, and one was the first punch in the fight. Like, come on, it's got to be D tier. France, I'm gonna have to say for their population size, I'm gonna say it's B tier. You got Cyril Gane, okay. You got Benoit Saint Denis. Some people are calling him Benoit Scam Denis because he literally just got to fighting Dustin Poirier off of Aura, but he's still decent. You got guys, and he's still in the rankings somehow. I think Ludovic Klein and Joel Alvarez should be ahead of him, but he's still in the top rankings, top 15. And then you got guys like Nasruddin Imavov, who is also nationality-wise, he's Dagestan, Russia, but he's the number one guy in the middleweight division now. He's the top guy there. So, they got around, and then you got like Morgan Charrier. Um, what's the other guy who just fought? Um, he just fought Hyder Emil. You guys probably know who I'm talking about, but for some reason I just can't remember the name. Um, yeah, I mean, they got some guys like that. That guy that just fought Hyder Emil, I thought he won against Hyder Emil. Very close fight, though. And before then, he beat Joe Anderson Brito. Another close fight, but he usually has close fights. And it was, you know, he's just outside the top 15, like 20, 25. These guys, like, they have really skilled guys in France, similar to Brighton, or Britain, however you pronounce it. B tier. Again, B tier, Canada. They have some decent female fighters now. They have, what's her name? How am I forgetting these names? They have Julian Robertson. They have the girl that's fighting Jessica Andrade in UFC 315. They have Ayman Zahabi. They have um, Charles Jourdain. They have some good guys, but mainly it's GSP holding them afloat. And even he is retired. He retired like 6 years ago. No, like nine, I think, 8, 9, 7, somewhere around there. UFC 217, I think it was, he retired, so it's a long time ago. You know, I think that you gotta put it in B tier, just because of George St. Pierre. He's carrying the country so hard, but you do got some guys. Mike Malott, he had a chance at breaking into top 15. It was an embarrassing loss to Neil Magny, but he's a decent Canadian fighter. So they got some decent guys still, but GSP's holding them afloat because he's a potential GOAT as well. Italy. I'm sorry, Italy, but no, you know what? I'm gonna put them in C, low, low C, because I'm sorry, Italy. You're great, you're cool, but I mean, Marvin Vittori is the best you got, and he's top 10 somehow still. I think he should be top 15, but not top 10. But he's got like okay fundamentals. It's mostly his chin that's keeping him afloat, and otherwise, who else? It's mostly Marvin Vittori. So he's top 10, but that's it. That's it really. And then you got Japan. I'm gonna have to put them in low C as well. I'm gonna say ahead of Italy, but not quite that much further. Definitely not ahead of Japan. I mean, China. Japan has Tatsuro Taira and Kaya Sakura. They have two other guys who are in the lower weight classes, or three maybe, who are pretty good outside the rankings in bantamweight and flyweight, but otherwise it's Kaya Sakura and Tatsuro Taira. They've got insane grappling. I mean, not Kaya Sakura, he does not have insane grappling. Tatsuro has insane grappling, and they have a couple, or a little more than a couple, good guys that can grapple, but aside from that, it's like, it's slim pickings. So they're making their surge in the UFC. They're making their rise, but it's a slow one. And then, I mean, come on. This is gonna be maybe a unpopular take, but I'm gonna put Georgia in S tier. Okay, maybe it's not unpopular. Maybe it is now. I understand that Taporia and Marab have been glazed a lot lately, but they deserve it. They absolutely do. You have a country that's around 4, 5 million, maybe. It could be a little more than that. Even if they have like 10 million people in Georgia, it's still impressive that you have such a small country with two UFC champions who both defended their titles against champions who a lot of people were picking the challenger against them. You know, you have even Roman Dolidze, you have Guram Kutateladze, you have Alejandro Topuria. You have these guys that even though they aren't champion, you have Giga Chikadze, whom is top 15 right now. You have guys that are, even though they aren't champions, they're also like in the UFC. They're also doing good work. You have like even Roman Dolidze is top 15. Maybe it doesn't say that he is right now. I think they do actually say in the middleweight division he's like top 15. But you have two top 15 guys there. You have a couple of good guys outside the rankings, and then you have the two champions who are freaking insane. Now, Ilya is technically fighting out of Spain, I'm pretty sure, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that when we talk about Spain. Either way, he's also repping Georgia, so we gotta say, I mean, for the population size, 4 million, I'm pretty sure. Last I checked, 4 or 5 million, something around there. It's insane how small their country is, and yet they produce such great champions. Now we have, um, yeah, South Africa. I'm going to have to put them in, I'm going to say just below Canada. Now, that might be a little crazy because, oh, wow, they actually, they have a current champion who has two title defenses, and he's doing great. And they also have Cameron Simon, but, he hasn't done too much. He's like 2-2 in the UFC, I think, maybe 3-2, something like that. But they're mainly carried by Dreykus, and Dreykus du Plessis. He is really good, really, really good. He's definitely top 3 middleweights of all time. But, I mean, let's just stop kidding ourselves here. He's the only guy, and, he didn't do what GSP has done in his career. So, a great country in the UFC, but not quite there. Serbia. I'm going to put in, I'm going to put just ahead of Japan. Now, the thing about Serbia is they got guys like well, not guys, but they have um Alexander Rakic. I don't know why that took me a while to remember, but Alexander Rakic is really good. He's had close fights with um Yuri Prohaska and Magomed Ankalaev. But unfortunately, those guys, Yuri just gritted down and he eventually found the KO. But he was winning that fight. And Magomed Ankalaev is just, he kept it 50-50 on the feet until for some reason Rakic went for a takedown in the final round. I don't understand his fight IQ there, but he's had some great wins. The Jimmy Manawa KO head kick. He's had some other performances which are great. Jan Blachowicz, that was a close fight in which until he got injured, I actually thought that Rakic was winning. And Jan is really good too, so that shows how good, Rakic is. Otherwise, though, you have Uros Medic, Dursko Trodovic, I think, the guy who got KO'd by Ansar Abdul Malik. Not really great outside the rankings, but they're like 50-50 fighters, Uros Medic and Dursko Trodovic. I really always mess up his name. Apologies to him. But Croatia now. I'm going to have to say it's, some people are going to be mad at this, but I'm going to put it low B, okay? Now, the reason I'm going to put it low B, okay, I understand the most we have right now is Ivan Erslan. Okay, I get it, okay? And he's also lost a split decision to Ion Cutelaba. But Ion Cutelaba is on a 2-fight win streak now, who had an arm triangle choke against Ibo Aslan, who was a really high prospect, a really highly touted prospect. Most people were saying, oh, he's going to be like Mingying Zhang in the light heavyweight division. But now we see that, a split decision loss in which he could have won against Ion Cutelaba is actually not bad for Ivan Erslan. And Ion Cutelaba is just outside the top 15. So this isn't bad for him. And I know you're going to be like, okay, well, what about you had Italy in C tier or Japan in C tier just for having top 10, top 15 around that region, guys. Why is Croatia ahead? Now, I know you guys are going to disagree, maybe. Maybe. I'm not saying you, I know that, but I know you guys could disagree here, and that's fine. But Stipe had the Croatia shorts, okay, against John Jones. He had that. He repped Croatia. I don't care that he's American, okay? He is originally Croatian, and he knows that, which is why he did the dance after beating Daniel Cormier in 2019. He did that Croatian dance. He repped the UFC shorts. It's why he always brings respect to Croatia, and when it's ever mentioned, it's why he always is happy to rep Croatia. At the same time of mentioning US, of course, like the iconic OH, in his win against Alistair Overeem. He is half Croatian in my book, okay? So he is going to, because he is the heavyweight GOAT, he is going in the B tier. He is carrying Croatia into the B tier in UFC, okay? I don't care what y'all say. We got Poland now, and they are going just ahead of Croatia. Just ahead, but just behind South Africa. Because they got Jan Blachowicz, who was like a top 5, in my opinion, UFC not middleweight, light heavyweight of all time. I truly believe that. And then you got Joanna Jędrzejczyk, who actually, you know what? I'm going to put ahead of South Africa because they got more quality fighters. They got Mateusz Gamrot, they got Joanna Jędrzejczyk, whom, yes, she retired, but she's still the arguable GOAT of strawweight in, women's strawweight. They got Mateusz Rumbetsky, he's a good guy just outside the top 15. They got some really good guys there still. And so, Poland's really underrated. Jan Blachowicz is, I would say, carrying it right now because, Poland, it's like they don't got a lot of guys, but they got some really quality guys. You know what I'm saying? They don't, it's like, it's kind of like, a little bit to a higher extent of what Croatia is, but actually, one thing we got to take into consideration with Croatia as well, they have only a 4 million population, and this is something with Serbia as well. Now, China has Zhang Weili, which is why I can't put Serbia ahead of them. So because not Ioana, Zhang Weili is really good, but and I can't put Croatia above South Africa, but I'm just sorry. I'm sorry. Serbia and Croatia have such small populations that it's so impressive, It's so impressive. And Stipe is half Croatian, really. Stipe is not really. He doesn't live in. Stipe doesn't live in Croatia, but he reps Croatia, so I'm gonna say that he's still in B tier. And Poland, like I said, they got Jan Blachowicz. He's really good. He went 50-50 with Alex Pereira and Magomed Ankalaev. He also took the Magomed Ankalaev fight originally when it was 3 rounds, and then it got switched to 5 rounds. So if it was still a 3-round fight before the championship fight of Yuri and Glover, if it was still on, Jan would have still won that, or he would have won, and it wouldn't have been a draw because he would have won all 3 of the first rounds. I don't care what anyone says, he won the first rounds. It was a draw. But yeah, I say all this to say Poland and Croatia and Serbia, all underrated, very underrated. And we have Moldova. Now, Moldova, I'm going to have to put. You guys are going to be like, what? But I'm going to have to put this, okay? I'm going to have to put this. I'm going to say in high C, okay? Having Sergey Spivak, okay? Alexander Romanov, I know he's not in the UFC anymore, but he was a top 15 guy. And Ion Kutalaba, all of which were like top 15, and Sergey Spivak still top 10. That's incredibly impressive, okay? It's what was that? Sergey Spivak is the one that's really keeping it afloat right now, but the fact that they had multiple top 10 guys, I'm going to say that's a little more impressive than having one guy who's in the top 5 in Alexander Rakic, and the rest of the offerings haven't made it to the rankings, so I'm going to put in C, high C. And then Russia, I mean, come on. They got to go in S as well. It's 50-50 between them and Georgia, because even though Georgia has an insane, great champions, especially for the population, Russia has, Khabib, Islam, Makhachev, both of which are the two top guys in lightweight of all time, best lightweight fighters of all time. Some even would say that they would maul welterweights, which I don't necessarily buy that, but that's, their opinion. We haven't seen it yet. Maybe if Islam Makhachev moves up, then we'll see it. We got Magomed Ankalaev, Pavlovich. Sergey Pavlovich was a interim championship, not contender, but challenger, interim heavyweight challenger, And you got Magomed Ankalaev, which Magomed Ankalaev might be at Pereira. Stay tuned for my video on that. They got so many good guys in the past, and they still got good guys coming up. I can't name all the contenders and all that, but Umar Nurmagomedov's a great guy. He went almost 50-50 with Merab. Merab clearly beat him, but he went almost 50-50. Merab's just next level. You know, you got a lot of guys. You got a lot of really good guys. So, I mean, even throughout history, we could go back further. They got so much good guys in sports, athletic competitions. But this is mainly UFC. But, I mean, yeah, I'm going to save the glaze for another time. Great guys, though. Great champions in the UFC. And they still have so many guys within rankings and outside the rankings. And we got our first 8 here. I mean, having like Kamaru Usman, the second best welterweight, and we got what is it? Adesanya, the second best middleweight of all time. Like, that's insane. That really is. And granted, they have a 250, 230, 240 million around their population. So, the population size for what it is, it's like, okay, that kind of makes sense that they would have two of the near greats of their divisions, near greatest, I mean. But, it's still like insanely impressive. Again, the population is kind of hindering me from quite putting an A tier, because aside from them, they got not really much offerings aside from them too. They have Kamaru Usman's brother, but he's, I think, 2-2 in the UFC, so he's 50-50 outside the rankings. Yeah, I think A is a great spot for them. And then we have for C tier, I'm gonna have to put at the back. Actually, no, actually, you know what? I'm gonna have to put ahead of Italy, just because, and ahead of Japan, actually, even because Japan's got a huge population, 200 million. So even though they got some better guys, Volkan Oezdemir is a top 10 guy, and he was also a challenger. People forget, man. My impression of Joe Rogan saying that isn't quite as good as Guru's, but people forget, man. Volkan Oezdemir challenged Daniel Cormier for his championship belt in UFC. I forget which. I think it was UFC 222, but maybe it was 223 or 222. But either way, he challenged for the belt, and he didn't win, obviously, but he was a title challenger. So Volkan Oezdemir is carrying Switzerland on his back, and he's still a top 10 guy. Brazil, you got to still put it. Um, Brazil, you still got to put in S tier. Okay. Now the reason for that is, right, Charles Oliveira, Alex Pereira, um, Diego Lopez challenging for the belt soon. Okay, Jilton Almeida. You got lots of guys. They're just not all coming to mind right now. You got Gene Silva. I mean, the entire Fighting Nerds, Marcio Ruffi, Kyle Baralho. So many guys. So many talented guys. Anderson Silva was the GOAT. Arguably, you could say that Adesanya is, but especially since he took PEDs. He did take some form of performance enhancing drugs. Now it might not have been like specifically crazy performance enhancing drug, but he did cheat. We know that. He got caught for that. But Adesanya also cheated. I mean, we're not gonna forget that he had a boob on his pec against Paulo Costa. But Paulo Costa is another one. Yeah, he hasn't won a lot lately, but he beat Yoel Romero back in the day. Arguably, it was a robbery. Yeah, but he he did get the win, and Yoel is a former three-time title challenger. So Brazil, they've had so many great guys in the past. I can't name them all right now, but I mean, come on, they're on the same level as America, Russia, and Brazil, where it's like their past has been so good, and they still have like almost half the roster Brazilians. And Russians also are. I would say that Brazil has a better legacy just because there's more fighters from Brazil compared to Russia. I would say it's a little more Brazilians in the UFC than Russians. So, and also their legacy goes further back. So I would have to put them a little ahead, but no question they are super high level in the UFC. And then Chile, I mean, I'm sorry I got to put them in high D. They have Ignacio Bahamondes, but as far as who else, I mean, it's really slim pickings. It's hard to say. So, they got Ignacio Bahamondes. He might become top 15 if he beats Jalen Turner in this up and coming UFC 313 event, but he might not, so we'll see. Mexico, another B tier. I'm going to have to say it's just behind Canada. You got no, I'm gonna have to put it behind Poland just because Mexico's a little bigger, actually quite a bit bigger population-wise. It's got like 160 million to I wouldn't quite say 200 million. I mean, some of these numbers population-wise is hard to say, but I would say it's like around 160, 70 million population. And, they got Alexa Grasso. She dethroned one of the greatest female fighters of all time, Valentina Shevchenko. Then, granted, she lost and got a robbery win in the second fight, which was, I mean, not a win, it was a draw, but either way, she's had close fights with Valentina Shevchenko until the third one, which was a complete and utter domination from Shevchenko. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, she absolutely destroyed her like Volkanovski did to Brian Ortega, but, she clearly won all the rounds. And then we have, Yair Rodriguez, if I could say it right. He got the interim title. We got Brandon Moreno. He has a lot of great wins in flyweight. He's still pretty young, and he dethroned a top 5, maybe even top 3 champion in flyweight in, what was his name? Davison Figueiredo. I know his name. I was just, I'm just thinking on the spot here, so it's like, got to remember quick. And, you know, he's also not defended, but he's also won twice against Davison Figueiredo. It could have arguably been 2-2 because and also Brazil has Davison Figueiredo. That's another guy, and Alejandro Pantoja, 2 other Brazilian champions. Just another 2 to just throw out there, just in Brazil's favor there. But you got a lot of great champions like Brandon Moreno and Alexa Grasso's there, Yair Rodriguez is there. Those guys, those 3 UFC champions are kind of carrying Mexico, but you got some other contenders here and there. You got some like there's the Rodriguez guy who won at UFC 306 in his fight against Ode Osborne. I believe his last name was Rodriguez. I forgot the first name. Apologies there, but you got some other guys there on the come up, and Drew Dober's fighting the guy that. Can't believe I'm forgetting the name. The guy that fought Ignacio Bahamondes. So, they're pretty decent. They're pretty decent. B tier, gonna have to put. Actually, I'm gonna have to say low A tier for Britain. Now that's gonna come to shock as a shock to some, but you got Leon Edwards. He dethroned the second greatest of all time in welterweight. He beat Colby Covington pretty decisively. I think even without the foot injury, he would have beat Colby Covington pretty decisively. And, he lost to Bilal Muhammad, but that just shows how great America is in its wrestling. And I know that he trained with Khabib and all them, but still, he's an American-born guy, I'm pretty certain, or at least he reps America in certain pages, certain websites, so he's gonna, he's gonna go in America's sort of list. And then he beat Leon, so that shows how great they are. You got and honestly close to being GOAT in what's his name? I can't believe I'm forgetting here. Tom Espinal. Yeah, who is KOing people in the first round, stopping them in the first round. It's crazy. He has a lot of great guys, lots of great guys on his resume, and I think that he's super underrated, Tom Espinal. You got top 5. guy in Arnold Allen, and they've got around 60 million in population. Who else is actually a Britain guy? Actually, you know what? I can't put them in A. I just can't. I just can't. Because the more I'm thinking about it, yes, there's a lot of good Britain guys. There are. There really are. But man, they haven't done more than Mexico and Poland, or France or Canada. They don't have. Man, I also got to rethink France placement. I got to because no, they don't have really champions. So, I mean, they had the interim champion, Cyril Gahn, but Cyril Gahn got the interim belt by beating Derek Lewis, whom, yes, back then he was decent, but let's be honest, he's not that good. So, actually, I think this makes more sense. I don't know. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this because Tom Aspinall is still the champion. You don't have any Britain champions except, I mean, you don't have any France champions right now. You have Britain champions right now, and Leon Edwards is the number one guy in welterweight. So even though Nasruddin Mavov is number one, there's no champion, so that kind of cancels out. And Ireland, I mean, they had Conor McGregor, so there is that. I'm gonna say high C because they had Connor. No, I'm gonna have to put it in B. Lots of things going in B, but I'm gonna have to put it in low B because they had Connor. They have Ian Gary, which is really solid. But who else? Who else really can we point to in the UFC? Ian Gary is really solid, really good. He could have gotten the next title shot if he beat Shavkat, and it was short notice, so maybe he could have done better on a full camp. But ultimately, he didn't win. And since Conor McGregor left the UFC, and maybe he'll come back, but let's be honest, he's formally left UFC, or maybe unformally. But since he's left, there's not really much talent. Connor really, he kind of carried the Ireland base in the UFC. There is the double champ status he had. He beat Jose Aldo and Eddie Alvarez for those belts. That alone is super high level, super. That's like top 20 all time fighter status right there. But I'm sorry, it's just otherwise, what else do you have? So I'm going to say low B. Their population, though, we have to talk about that as well. For their population size, it's incredibly impressive. It's just that, they don't have the, like, Ilya and Merab, they both defended their belts, and their wins are just more impressive, if you ask me. Aside from Jose Aldo, Eddie Alvarez isn't really too impressive. Dustin Poirier at featherweight wasn't too impressive. Losing to Shavkat, that's kind of impressive for Ian Gary, but Shavkat is not yet that, like, oh my gosh, he's championship level proven. So I'm gonna say B's, low B's fine. Australia, I mean, come on, you got to put that in A tier. Alexander Volkanovski, in my opinion, the greatest featherweight of all time. Some might disagree, but even if he beats Diego Lopez, there's no denying it. You cannot convince me otherwise. I mean, all the work he's done in featherweight, and then you got some other good guys on the come up from what is it, the City Kickboxing, and then Dan Hooker as well. He might also fit in that New Zealand as well, but I mean, Alex Volkanovski, it's a 20 million population, around 20, 23, 24, 25 million, somewhere around there. 20 to 25 million population, so that's really impressive for its size that it has the greatest featherweight of all time. It has some other good guys. I'm forgetting the names, but it has like Steve Erceg. He, in my opinion, beat Alejandro Pantoja, so he should be the flyweight champion. But then he got knocked out by Kai Kara France, so that's good for New Zealand. But they've got some like other good guys in there. They got um, Colby Thickness. He's in the UFC. He's doing his thing. You got some other guys in there. I can't believe I'm forgetting. I'm sure there's a few that I am forgetting, but overall, really good stuff from uh, Australia for their population size and the fact that they have the greatest featherweight of all time in one of the divisions. I mean, you gotta put it in A tier. And then we have Ukraine. Nikita Krylov is really carrying it. Aside from him, who else? I'm sorry, Ukraine, but I mean, Nikita Krylov is your only guy, really. And then Azerbaijan, Rafael Fiziev. I'm gonna have to say, it's the only Rafael Fiziev is the only guy. He's the only guy really, and he's Azerbaijan. He's number 11 ranked. He has fought Justin Gaethje when he was number 6 ranked, and Gaethje was number 3 ranked. So, in my opinion, that's a little better than Nikita Krylov at number 8 ranked or whatever, wherever he is. He certainly, yeah, he's higher than, what is it, Fiziev right now, but Fiziev is certainly higher accomplished, I would say, in the UFC in that he's fought more skilled guys. But it's close. And really, those are the only two guys in their respective countries. And Azerbaijan is a much smaller country, actually, so that's certainly much, much more impressive that they have one guy in the rankings. But aside from him, who else? And then we have Kazakhstan. Got to put it in low B. They got guys like, you know, um, he's a potential champion if he beats Bilal Muhammad, who's also a decent champion in what's his name? What's his name? Oh man, the guy that Ian Gary fought. I can't believe I'm forgetting. What is this? The blockhead. Uh, why am I stuck on this? Um, you know the guy that's fighting for the freaking welterweight belt next. This is embarrassing. Uh, Jeff Neal versus Wonder Boy versus. How am I forgetting? Okay, you know what I'm trying to say. The Shavkat Rakhmonov. There we go. My gosh, how did that take so long? Shavkat Rakhmonov. He's a great fighter. I love to fight him. No, I wouldn't. But you got Beksa Almakhan who dropped um, whatever. What's his name? Umar. What's his kid's name? What's his kid's name? Bedtime reference. Bedtime MMA. You got some other decent guys spread around the rankings. You got, yeah, so that guy was Beksa Almakhan, I think. You got guys like the guy that fought Manel Cap, just Apsu Almabayev. He's top 8, top 9, top 10. He's really good in the flyweight division, even though, not Muhammad, Manel Cap showed levels. For their population, I think I'm not too well researched on their population, but it's similar to Canada, I think. I think it's decent. So that's why I'm saying low B. The fact that they got a guy who's a title challenger, they got a guy who, if he beat Manel Cap, he would have been one win away from the championship contention. And, you know, they got some other guys spread around there that are also pretty decent. They don't come to mind immediately, but they got some other guys just shy of the rankings, I'm pretty certain, but yeah, it's pretty impressive. And then we got Kyrgyzstan. Um, I'm gonna have to put them. I'm gonna say. I'm gonna have to say. Ah, man, this is tough. No, I'm gonna have to say a high C. They got Valentina Shevchenko, one of the greatest female fighters of all time, definitely top three. That's impressive, but I mean, aside from her, they got Mitabek Oralbai. He's decent, but he's like top 30 in the UFC lightweight division. I get lightweight is stacked, but still, they got some other guys spread around there that I can't really think of. Some other guys outside the rankings. They're pretty decent, but really, Valentina Shevchenko is carrying Kyrgyzstan right now. And then we have Ecuador. Marlon Vera is carrying this, as well as there's some other guys in there. You got like the Moraes guy, Morales. Um, I forgot his first name, but the Morales guy that's fighting Gilbert Burns. That guy is top 10, top 15 maybe. He is decent. You got top 10 Marlon Vera. Maybe he's top 15 now, but you know, for for population size as well, I'm gonna say they're pretty underrated. I'm gonna say low C, but they got some decent guys there. And then Argentina, I'm sorry, but like they got 45 million population, and the best they could do is like um, El Gringo against Nasrat Haqparast. You know, he's good. He beat Nasrat in my opinion, but oh man, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. I know his nickname's El Gringo, but that's like the best. I know that they have someone else in the USC. It's just not coming into my like thought process right now. I forget who. They have a couple other guys, I think. They have Francisco Prado. There's another guy, but it's like, come on, you guys. They got more guys than Ukraine and Azerbaijan, Chile, India, but they, they they don't got really contenders. Like if Nasrat Haqparast rightfully lost to El Gringo, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. Uh, they would have freaking had the guy in the top 15 almost, no doubt, and he would have been fighting for a top 15 spot. But you know, they robbed him, so I just can't put him that. I just can't put Argentina above D. I can't do it. Peru, I think this is. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. I'm gonna have to say, mm, I don't know, man. They got a few guys outside the rankings. They got was it Kevin Borjas, something like that. Um, they got the guy that is fighting the guy that beat Ode Osborne at UFC 306, the Rodriguez guy. Uh, I'm gonna have to say that they're a little ahead of India, which I mean, no surprise there. I mean, the best they could do is freaking the best they could do is Jubli, Anshel Jubli. The best they could do. I mean, come on. And then Israel. Okay, Israel. They got I mean, I'm gonna have to put them ahead of Peru, but I mean, they don't really got that many guys. I mean, aside from like Yanal Ashmuz and Natan Levy, who I think is actually cut from the UFC now, who do they got? Jean Silva? Okay, no, I'm not gonna get into that, but Jean Silva is your guy? I mean, come on, who else? They don't really have anyone that's actually like in the UFC that's actually repping Israel. The only guy that they got is like Michel Pereira, who is, technically repping the flag, but he's Brazilian. He's Brazilian. Like, the dude repped it for one fight, and that was it. It was against Andre Petrovsky, I think. So, aside from that one fight, he's never really mentioned it. And I guess in an Ariel Helwani interview. But aside from that, you got it's slim pickings. You got Natan Levy and you got and you got Yunat Lashmuz. Like, and Natan Levy's cut from the UFC. So you got one guy who's on a loss right now, I think. And then Sweden. I mean, Jack Hermansson's just carrying. I mean, I just got to be honest. He just is. So, low C. He's decent, but, very low C. And then we got um what's this one? UAE. You got Hamzat. I mean, Hamzat's really carrying. I mean, he beat two legends. He beat Kamaru Usman, and he beat Robert Whitaker, two legends of the middleweight and welterweight weight classes. So I'm gonna have to say that it's in low B just for that reason. He is carrying. So I'm gonna say it's above Uzbekistan. Or no, Uzbekistan. I'm so sorry. Kazakhstan, South Korea. I mean, they got really Korean zombies carrying them. They don't got a lot of guys aside from him. They got a few prospects that they got from Road to UFC, but I mean, aside from that, what else? I mean, what else? So I'm actually gonna have to put. I mean, also they have like a 50 million population, 50, 60, 70, somewhere around there. So honestly, for just having the Korean zombie who has challenged for the belt a few times, or maybe just once, yeah, I get that, and he has been in the rankings for quite some time, doing some decent things. But aside from that, I mean, it's really slim pickings. I'm gonna have to put them actually just ahead of Italy, I think. And you got Dominican Republic, I believe. They got Waldo Cortez Acosta. That's about it. He's just top 15 in heavyweight, barely. And I mean, he just beat like Rubeles de Spain for that, I think. So not really great stuff there. Like otherwise, I'm gonna have to say just there, just there. Czech Republic, I mean, very underrated, very, very underrated. They got 10 million population and they have a champion, former champion in Yuri Prohaska. And even when he's not champion, he's still doing work, proving that he is the Colby Covington to Kamaru Usman. He is the Max Holloway to Alexander Volkanovski. And he's made some adjustments, head movement wise, maybe not leg kick wise. And defensively, again, leg kicks are a problem, but he could prove some problems to Magomed and Alex Pereira, no question. So I'm gonna have to say, especially for a 10 million population. Now, yes, they that's the only guy they got, Yuri Prohaska, but I'm gonna have to say for their population size, I'm gonna have to say, uh, I'm gonna say just ahead of UAE. I think that's a pretty fitting spot. And I'm actually gonna have to put South Africa ahead of France. I'm gonna have to do that because France just doesn't have any like proper champions. They have number one contenders, but they don't have champions, you know? So, you know, like South Africa has champions, okay? Well, champion one, but they have a champion and a pretty good one at that. Top three, I would say. And then you have Spain. Half of what Ilya reps is Spain, so that counts for something. And then they do have, in my opinion, top 15 guy in Joel Alvarez. He's not quite there yet, but when he beats Benoit Saint Denis, which he will, most people are picking him to do so as well. When he beats Benoit Scam Denis, I'm sorry, Benoit, but Benoit Scam Denis is what you're going to be known for until you get a win in recent memory. So, he's going to win against him and he's going to get top 15. You got a guy that's practically top 15. You got a guy that half reps you that is, yeah, he's mostly Georgian, but he reps Spain. So even though he's like genetically mostly, if not fully Georgian, he is in fact also calling himself a Spaniard. He is calling himself like he reps the flag. So Ilya is gonna have to count for something here, and for me, that's enough to qualify for um, being, I would say, just ahead of South Korea. I would say that's pretty fair because, yeah, they don't really have a proper Spaniard that's like done significant stuff in the UFC, but aside from his Arman Sarukian loss, Joel Alvarez has good wins in the UFC, and he deserves to be in the top 15. And then on top of that, you got Ilia Topuria, who he trains in Spain, so he's half repping it. So, and then you have Portugal, Portugal, Portugal. I'm gonna have to say that Portugal is going in. I mean, who they got for Portugal? They got Manel Cap, so I guess that counts for something there. I'm gonna have to say that Manel Cap is pretty much carrying Portugal. Yeah, they have some other guys, I'm sure, but I mean they have that top 15, top 10 um, female fighter in I believe it's straw not strawweight flyweight who's pretty good in Portugal, but I think that Manel Cap's pretty much carrying uh, Portugal, so I'm gonna have to say like a high D tier. I'm gonna have to say actually it goes ahead of Argentina. So yeah, and then we have Uzbekistan. I'm pretty sure. Uzbekistan, they have a lot of guys outside the rankings that are pretty good. They have Nursultan Ruzaboyev. They have the guy that just beat Charles Johnson in the last week's event. They have some decent guys for their population as well. So I'm gonna have to say, mm, I'm gonna have to say low C, low C. They have some decent guys. And then Armenia, I mean, come on, they got Arman Sarukian. You know, I know that he's like originally Georgian, but he is Armenian as well. He reps Armenia. I'm gonna have to say Arman Sarukian, especially for their tiny population, very tiny. It's like 2-3 million. I'm gonna have to give it a. I'm gonna have to actually put it in A just for what he's able to do. He's number one ranked, and he is in a 2 million population. 2 million. Think about it. And then so for him, he's carrying. I'm gonna have to say, I know that's crazy A tier, but I gotta put it there. And then D tier for Lithuania. I'm sorry, but you got Modestas Bukauskas, and that's about it. That's about it. Okay. Modestas Bukauskas is really solid, but I would say he's like top 30 in the UFC light heavyweight division, so not bad. But he needs one more win to really prove that he can be in the low C. I would say he can make that country in low C. It's just for being a low population country, it's impressive that he's even doing work in the UFC. But it's just you gotta do a little more. You gotta do a little more. And then we got Afghanistan. You got guys like Nasrat Robbery Parast. That's a terrible nickname, but Nasrat or Haq Parast, the king of robberies, robbed Jared Gordon, robbed El Gringo, Esteban Ribovic. There's his name. And yeah, but he has some good wins. He has some decent wins. He beat Jimmy Mularkey pretty convincingly, and he does have those wins on paper against Esteban Ribovic and Jared Gordon. Um, I'm gonna, he's just shy of the rankings. I would say you got Javed Basharat and Farid Basharat. Those guys also are Afghanistan. I'm pretty certain of. So I'm gonna have to say they're just shy of C tier, low C tier. And then you got Morocco. I mean, Yusuf Zalal is carrying this. I'm gonna have to say. Um, he beat Calvin Qatar pretty convincingly. And, Max Holloway, he was in the ring with. He was in the ring with Josh Emmett. Calvin Qatar was once a really solid fighter. So I'm going to have to say the fact that, um, he had a 29-28 with Calvin Qatar and Ilya Taporia back in the day. I'm going to say Yusuf Salal carries it to a, I'm going to have to say C tier right here. I'm going to say that's pretty fair. And then you got um, no, Venezuela, not Ecuador. Um, they mostly got female fighters. They got Dan Hardy's wife, Veronica Hardy. They got Rodriguez, another girl with the last name Rodriguez. She's just shy of the rankings, if not already in top 15. So she's decent. They mostly got female fighters right now, though. They don't really got a lot of talent within the male sphere of MMA fighting right now. So, you know, and especially in UFC. So I'm gonna have to say just maybe like just ahead of Israel, I would say. And then we got Netherlands. Um, Netherlands is really good. They got Rainer de Ritter, but I mean, actually, aside from him, who else? Rainer de Ritter is really good, really underrated, but aside from him, who else? So I'm gonna have to put his Netherlands in. For the population size, it is quite impressive, actually. So I'm gonna have to put it. Mm, I'm gonna put it just shy of, just middle of the pack, I would say, actually. And then Haiti. I mean, people forget, man. The nickname of Neil Magny is the Haitian sensation, something like that. Haitian sensation, something like that. So, he does kind of rep it in his nickname, but um, aside from that, he is American, granted, but you got guys. People also forget, man. That was cringe, but people also forget, like um, Ovis St. Preux. He was a title challenger, an interim title challenger. Granted, he was number six ranked during that interim title challenge against John Jones, and he was dominated. But he was in the ring with John Jones, and he is a fighter from Haiti. So I'm gonna actually have to say, just for that reason, I understand that they're not really that prominent right now, but just for the history, just for the fact that he was able to get to a title in the past, I'm gonna have to put them in low C. I think that's pretty fair. And then we got Neymar. I hope I'm not butchering that. They got Joshua Van. That's pretty much it. I'm gonna have to put them. Actually, they got the same colors pretty much almost as Lithuania. That's kind of interesting. I'm gonna have to say he's top 15 material. I know Charles Johnson replaced him in number 15, but if he gets a win in this next weekend's event, Joshua Van is gonna be in number 15. So I'm gonna have to say, you know what? I'm gonna have to say for the population as well, considering that, I'm gonna have to say. I'm gonna have to say just because they're a little more skilled than they're quite a bit more skilled than they're quite a bit more skilled than heavyweight. I'm gonna have to put them I'm gonna have to put it ahead of Dominican Republic because they just have Walter Cortez Acosta, I think his name is. So, just for that reason, like skill wise, I think Joshua Van's more impressive than Waldo Cortez Acosta, but pretty close. And then we have Suriname. I think that's how you say it. I checked the population; it's like 500, 600,000. That's crazy for the fact that Jairzinho Rosenstrike was able to get to the top 10, maybe even top 5 at one point. I think that's like insane for their population size. So I'm gonna have to put them for the fact that one of their fighters at a freaking 500,000, 600,000 population got to top 5, top 10 at one point. I understand it's heavyweight, but I'm going to have to put him at A tier. I'm going to have to. You got to take into consideration the population. You have to. And he barely, like, it was a clear cut win for Sergey Pavlovich. Don't get me wrong. And he has had some losses in UFC, no question. But he had a close fight against a former title challenger in Sergey Pavlovich. And then we have Scotland. I mean, come on, they beat the goat Magomed Ankalaev, Big Ank, and whatever his name is, whatever his name is, Jamal Hill. Two former. I mean, you could argue that Magomed should have gotten the win against Jan Blachowicz. I'm not mad at that, but technically, one former champion and one two-time challenger of the belt, number one ranked guy, Magomed Ankalaev. So the fact that he got the submission against those guys, I'm talking about Paul Craig. That's really impressive. So on wins, on merit, I understand that he's also lost a lot. So we got to talk about that. But on the fact that they're only like a 10 million population or so, something around there, that's really impressive. I'm gonna have to put them in B tier. Otherwise, they got like Chris Duncan. That's okay, I guess, but not really too much else. Bahrain, they got Shamil Gaziev, the GOAT. He really is. He really is. And for the population size as well, we got to take into consideration as well top 15. Um, I'm gonna say, it's a little bit. No, if I'm gonna have Portugal in D tier, I'm gonna have to put it just shy of C tier, just because we got to talk about. Granted, there's like only one guy in Manel Cap, but he is top 5, top 6, top 7 ish. We got to talk about that. If I'm gonna have that in D tier, granted they have a certainly higher population, certainly, but you know Shamil's not that skilled. Let's be honest. It's kind of lucky that he managed to get into the top 15. So yeah, and then Australia. I mean New Zealand. The flags are similar. Okay, they just are. And then we have. I'm gonna have to give it super low B. He's potentially. I'm talking about Kai Kara France here. Potentially gonna be challenging for the belt in flyweight. That's pretty good. He knocked out the guy who I think beat the champion, Steve Erceg, and I'm talking about uh, what's his name, Kai Car France, and they got a small population as well. They got like 5 to 10 million population, something like that. So, the fact that they got a title challenger, number 4 or 3 ranked somewhere around there, got to give him his respect, and even like some other of the city kickboxing guys, whom are you know Australian or New Zealand. There's a few guys in there that I'm forgetting. So, got to give them their props. And then we have Belarus. Belarus. I'm gonna have to give it, for the work that Andrei Arlovsky did. I'm gonna have to put it in the. I'm gonna have to put it in the. I'm gonna have to put in the low C. I know that. No, I'm gonna have to put it actually just shy, just ahead of Haiti. I understand that Andrei Arlovsky, he has a lot of losses, a ton of losses, but so does Oven St. Preux, and Andre actually managed to get the belt, so gotta mention that. Nobody talks about it. Andrei Arlovsky was a really, I mean, no, people do talk about it, but not any of the newer MMA fans, not any of the ones that watch these like popular YouTubers, which I mean, I also am guilty of. I'm not really giving these UFC champions that are very old their flowers, their respects. I'm not these older champions. I don't give the respects enough to. So I got to start doing that more. And Slovakia, they got Martin Budet. That's pretty much it. Okay, so actually no, they got Ludwig Klein. I just remembered, and he also is a guy that should be in top 15 in the lightweight division. So let's be honest here. For the population size as well, got to put it in low C. I think you got to put it right there because actually, no. I gotta be honest. It's unfortunate. They just don't have the proving grounds yet. Martin Budet was just shy of top 15 until he lost to Shamil Gaziev just a moment ago, just like a year ago. I know that's not a moment ago, but you get what I'm saying. And so, before then he was top 15, and Ludwig Klein is pretty much top 15. They just didn't give him the matchup that would get him into the top 15 yet. The UFC hasn't yet, so that's unfortunate. But, I mean, let's be honest. They're pretty good. They're pretty good. It's just that they haven't gotten the chance to prove themselves. And so if I'm going to have Portugal at the top of D, I got to be honest. I got to be consistent here. Denmark, I mean, didn't they have Marco Madsen or something? And they also got someone else pretty decent as well, but not really too much of note here. Yeah, their population size is something to take into account, but they're they're good. There's some decent guys outside the rankings. There's I can't think of them, but there's a few guys outside the rankings that are decent. So I'm gonna have to say I'm gonna give it to. I'm gonna put it just in front of Venezuela. And then we have Germany. Yeah, I mean, they got Abus Magomedov. Now, granted, he did lose to Sean Strickland, but they got like an 80 million population. And yeah, he has a couple wins now. Now, Abus is actually coming into a decent win streak, decent wins. But, he did lose quite embarrassingly to Sean Strickland. And Sean Strickland's a former champion, so, we got to mention that. But aside from that, like, not too much there. I'm gonna have to put it in the low C tier. And then Zimbabwe, they got Demba Garimbo, so they're pretty decent in that regard. But I mean, he got absolutely decimated by Vicente Luque, who's another great Brazilian fighter. Again, Brazil on top in the UFC, so we got to talk about that. I'm gonna have to put them in the. I'm gonna have to put them in I think the definitely D tier, but I mean where is the question? I'm gonna say. I'm gonna say just shy of where Dominican Republic is. I'm gonna say lower middle area because even though like they got Demba Grimbo, but aside from that, like who else? Actually, I'm gonna say just in front of Denmark. And then last but not least, we have Greece. I'm gonna have to say Greece is. You know what? I mean, they got Vanessa Demopoulos. They got Andreas Michailidis, I think his name was. They got a few guys, but I'm gonna have to say it's a D tier, just because Andreas Michailidis. I mean, he isn't that the guy that got KO'd by Pereira in his debut. So I mean, it's not really. I mean, he did stall him against the fence for a little bit, so that's kind of impressive. But I mean, that's when Pereira was young in his career. So I'm gonna have to say. It's just ahead of India, and obviously the population size plays a factor in that because they're kind of on the same level. Although Vanessa Demopoulos did get some robbery wins, so I guess I'll put it ahead of Peru there. But yeah, I think that's a pretty good list. I think this makes sense. Thank you so much for watching. This is Masked MMA out. Like, comment, subscribe.